All right, so we're diving back into crypto today with this Vantage Plus analysis. You sent this over, it just dropped today. And yeah, we got to unpack this. What signals is it flashing for us for the coming week? I think that's the big question here. How can we boil this down to the most crucial takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think right off the bat, what's really interesting here is this divergence that Vantage Plus is highlighting, right? We've seen some pretty significant drops in traditional markets, right? Especially U.S. tech after all that tariff news. Um, but crypto has shown a really interesting level of stability last week. I mean, Bitcoin only dipped, what, like 6% or so?
Yeah, around there.
Which, compared to the NASDAQ taking an 11% hit, I mean, that's pretty remarkable resilience.
Yeah, it really makes you think, right? Because we've got, Standard Chartered coming out and saying, hey, maybe Bitcoin's actually starting to act as this kind of hedge against, broader financial instability. And if that's the case, I mean, that really begs the question, what happens if we see some positive movement in traditional equities? Could that really pour fuel on the crypto fire, so to speak? I think to get a better sense of that, we really need to dive into the technical analysis that Vantage Plus has laid out here, starting with Bitcoin. They've got it trading around $82,676. It attempted to bounce back last week, but managed to hold above that $80,000 level. And what's your take on that price action on the weekly chart?
Well, I mean, looking at the weekly candlestick pattern, as Vantage Plus is pointing out here,
Yeah.
it does seem to suggest, the potential for some further downward movement. Now, $80,000 did hold as support for now, but I think that the next really critical level to watch is going to be around $77,800. And that's right around where its 50-week moving average sits.
Hmm.
That's basically the average price over the last 50 weeks. So it gives us a really good sense of that longer-term trend. And then below that, you've got that significant area around $71,000, which was a pretty strong resistance point about a year ago.
Yeah.
So, for Bitcoin to really regain some positive momentum, it's going to need to break through that technical resistance zone up around $87,800.
Makes sense. All right, let's shift gears over to Ethereum. It's currently trading around $1,784, and the monthly chart is showing that it couldn't hold above that 50-month moving average towards the end of March. Sounds like that could be a bit of a warning sign for sentiment shifting, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the potential signal that Vantage Plus is highlighting here, right? Failing to hold above that longer-term average could suggest that market sentiment for Ethereum might be weakening in the coming weeks. What's interesting is they actually draw a parallel back to June 2022, where we saw a similar, pretty sharp drop, and then it was followed by a recovery back above that moving average.
Interesting.
So if we don't see a recovery relatively soon, then that $1,120 area becomes, a potential target on the downside. So I think the long-term chart is, definitely suggesting a bit of a cautious outlook in the short term for Ethereum.
All right, let's move on to XRP. It's sitting around 2.1258 right now, and the report is mentioning that it had a pretty bearish close last month, hinting that that downward trend could continue, and that high point from January this year is still acting as, sort of a ceiling for the price.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really notable here that Vantage Plus points out is that any kind of, short-term price increase in XRP could actually signal further declines down the road.
Wow, okay.
It seems like the overall trend for XRP is really tied to, the broader market's risk sentiment right now, which makes it potentially vulnerable to profit taking. So yeah, that reliance on, general market enthusiasm could be a weakness.
Interesting. All right, last but not least, let's talk about Solana trading at $117.88. Seems to be in this pretty consistent negative trend, staying below its 50-day moving average, which is now acting as resistance, a point it's just struggling to break above.
Exactly. And the fact that it's broken below that $120 support level is, as this analysis notes, that opens up the possibility for a further drop down towards that $80 level.
Yeah.
So Vantage Plus suggests that a recovery for Solana is really only likely if it can manage to break back above that 50-day moving average. So we need to see some kind of positive catalyst.
Right.
Maybe some broader crypto market strength or, some specific good news related to the Solana network to trigger that kind of a move.
All right, so wrapping up this deep dive into today's crypto analysis from Vantage Plus, it seems like we're seeing a market that's showing some resilience compared to traditional stocks, but also, kind of teetering on some of these really crucial technical levels. Bitcoin needs to hold that $80,000 mark. Ethereum needs to reclaim its position above that longer-term average XRP. Is very much at the mercy of broader market sentiment, it seems, and Solana is battling some pretty tough resistance below its moving average.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary, and it really highlights the fact that, crypto does have the potential to move independently of traditional markets right now. And, those key technical price points are definitely worth paying close attention to. Of course, this analysis gives us a fantastic snapshot for today, but we all know crypto moves fast. So these levels and interpretations, they can shift rapidly.
Definitely food for thought. And, here's something to consider. If Bitcoin really is starting to establish itself as this safe haven asset during times of, financial instability, how might future unexpected global economic events, further reinforce that idea or completely challenge it? That's something I think we're all going to want to keep in mind as we watch how things unfold.
Absolutely. A lot to keep an eye on in the coming weeks for sure.
Thanks for breaking it all down.
You got it. Always a pleasure.
And to all of you listening, thanks for joining us for this crypto deep dive. We'll catch you next time.